Now, I would not blame you if at this point you were having a strange sense of deja vu, because this does look a lot like the Excelsior, which I reviewed in my last video. But as I was about to move on to the Bird of Prey, a gentleman posted in one of my comment sections about the Excelsior, sorry, not the Excelsior, the Enterprise B. And I thought, oh yes, the Enterprise B, that would be that crossover film where the first few minutes are set in the original series timeline with Kirk and Chekhov and Scotty on the Enterprise B. And I thought to myself, I've got one of those. And this is the Diamond Select Enterprise B. So before I move on to the next generation, I actually need to cover this. But of course, the Enterprise B is just basically an Excelsior class with a few bells and whistles added to it, because as I understand it, the story goes that they didn't want to abuse the Excelsior's studio model by adding battle damage to it. The irony being that I think this is actually, there's actually a battle damaged version of the Enterprise B that Diamond Select did. And when I first saw it mentioned, I thought, yeah, but guys, it was never battle damaged. It went on a rescue mission to try and save two transport ships from an energy ribbon. No one actually attacked it as such. It just got itself stuck and got hammered by an energy ribbon. So it's not battle damage, but you know, whatever. So basically, they needed a ship for the Enterprise B. And in Star Trek Generations, which was effectively Star Trek 7, they redressed an Excelsior class ship and turned it into the Enterprise B. And as you can see here, you know, it is literally an Excelsior class. There is no two ways about it, apart from this bit down here. And it's this section which is the only difference to the normal Excelsior class design. This big sort of bulky section, they've literally, you can actually, even in this model, it looks like it's been bolted on. So all of this sort of flaring here around this edge was designed so that when the energy ribbon hits the Enterprise B, it can just take out this bit here and leaves the rest of it. And of course, the rest of it isn't the Excelsior. So they could damage the model for the energy ribbon hit without actually damaging the Excelsior body underneath it. They could just damage the extra bit. So otherwise, it's just an Excelsior class ship. And it annoys me because I came to quite like the Excelsior. And then they did this version of it, which is literally the Excelsior with a few bits bolted on. And then we never see this variant of the Excelsior ever again. And this Enterprise is, along with the C, is an Enterprise that we don't ever see or hear anything of ever again. So it goes into that sort of lost years period between the original series and Next Generation, where we see the very, very tiny snippets of from time to time, but we never actually got a series or a film set in that time period. So it remains one of those periods which is open for exploitation for future Star Trek series, but we haven't seen anything yet. So I've no idea, what I haven't really researched what the actual backstory behind the B is. In terms of what it then went on to do. I believe Captain Harriman remained in charge of it, and he was the guy who Kirk was sort of almost gagging to take over from. And as you can see, I think there are got some slightly different impulse engines here. I think these were sort of strapped on impulse engines to try and sort of make it stand out from the Excelsior, because these were the Excelsior's standard impulse engines, I think, from memory. But otherwise, it is just an Excelsior class. So haven't actually hunted down when Diamond Select brought this out, but I think it probably belongs in that later era of Diamond Select issues where they were starting to use sort of, you know, more up-to-date lighting and so on, because as I think I mentioned on the Excelsior video, that was, I think it was 2017, so it was quite a young ship at the time of making the video that I did then. But I can't immediately see, I don't have the box for this one, unfortunately. This one came loose. So, because it's Diamond Select, they're a little bit more careful than Playmates in terms of how they label things and so on. So there aren't any sort of obvious indicators there of age for this one. But I'm guessing it's probably sort of mid-2010s. Much like the other Excelsior, because this has so much in common. I mean, the battery compartment, I haven't gone into that one on this one, but it's exactly the same positioning as it is on the Excelsior. So just a little sort of slide tray of batteries just under the secondary hull here, sort of into the navigational deflector dish kind of area, just because that's the only place that's thick enough to hold them. So what I'll do is what I normally do, and I'll just kill the various lights off here so you can get an idea of what the model looks like when it's doing its electronic stuff. Because again, this one is fortunately in a good working condition, so I can show you.
It wouldn't be the Enterprise without a Sulu at the helm. Captain Kirk, I'd be honored if you'd give the order to get underway. Take us out. We're picking up a distress call, Captain. Helm, lay in an intercept course and engage at maximum warp. Risk is part of the game. You want to sit in that chair. Activate main deflector. Damage report, Ensign. I'm Captain John Harriman.
I think that's the first one.
It wouldn't be the Enterprise without a Sulu at the helm.
So I think that's your lot, and then it just starts cycling back around again, basically. But it's good. It's a good selection. I mean, the irony is that, as I mentioned at the start, the Enterprise B literally has just this first section of the film that it appears in, and that is it. That is its entire showing canonically on screen. It has had comics done about it. Interestingly, the actor who played Tuvok in Voyager, he was a member of the Excelsior crew, and he also appears on the bridge of the Enterprise B. But I noticed in rewatching that the first bit of that little segment, just to remind myself about the gag around Tuesdays, you might recall that nothing's installed until next Tuesday. So the Enterprise B leaves, they call it space dock, but I don't think it really is space dock. It's more one of these sort of construction docks where they do the outfitting. It's not the space dock. But he appears on screen. I think it's Tim Russ, isn't it? That's his name. So he appears on screen, but he doesn't have Vulcan ears. So although he again manages to get on the bridge of an Excelsior class vessel, he does so as a human rather than as a Vulcan, which is just sort of one of those little casting quirks, I guess, that, you know, when Voyager came along, I guess he stuck his hand up and said, yeah, I've been on a Star Trek film, can I have it, please? But this time they cast him as a Vulcan. So it's a little bit confusing like that, but he is there, and that is probably why. So there isn't really a lot more to say about this one, in the sense that, you know, it's an Excelsior derivative. They slap the name Enterprise on it. They give it a few more bells and whistles, presumably to try and differentiate it, because it is an Enterprise. But other than that, there isn't a lot more to say about it. I mean, interesting. I'm just looking at. I was just sort of looking at this area here and noticing that the it's a little bit sort of off in terms of the way in which the detailing has been put on. It just looks like it's a little bit off kilter, because here these little squares are right up against the impulse engines, but here they're away from the impulse engines. I'm not sure if that's correct or not, technically speaking, but it's unusual for Diamond Select to miss little details like that. But perhaps that was an error on the model itself, that they just didn't sort of change the positioning of them as they went round. Yeah, it's kind of curious, that one. But it's, you know, it's exactly the same. I mean, I don't know if this is rarer than the Excelsior model or not really. It's I don't know if that's even an issue for, you know, for this sort of range particularly. But it's a good looking ship again, and the sort of the add-on pieces do make it look a bit sort of bulkier. It makes it feel like it's got almost more presence, if that makes sense, as compared with the Excelsior. So I don't think it's a bad adaptation of it at all. I think it's just unfortunate in the sense that they couldn't think of anything snazzier to do with the Enterprise B other than to just reuse it as an Excelsior class. But then you might make that argument about the fact that there are other classes of Enterprise earlier as well that were simply, you know, the same as other, obviously as other Starfleet ships, because they all come in their own classes. And but I guess realistically, it's very unusual for any ship in Starfleet to be totally unique, because they're all just, you know, an example of the class of ship that's flying around at any given point in time. So, you know, that does kind of make sense. I think it's just, I suppose what the point I'm trying to make is that we've seen the Excelsior class before. So you would have thought they would have tried to make it more of a change in a new film with a new Enterprise. They would have actually, you know, created a new class to use with the Enterprise as a sort of an exemplar of that class. So, you know, as we first see the Sovereign class for the Enterprise E, you know, that's kind of new to us. We haven't seen that before, and that's the first time we see it is with the name Enterprise attached to it. So, you know, that's the sort of thing I'm thinking of here. Whereas obviously, you know, here we've seen an Excelsior before, and it's, oh look, here's another Excelsior class with some bits stuck onto it, and it's the Enterprise, way! It's, you know, but it does. The interesting thing about Generations is that, I might have mentioned this before, is that it's the first Star Trek film that we get where there are in fact two Enterprises in the same film. So we get the Enterprise B and we get the Enterprise D both in the same film. It's probably the only time that happens that I can think of. So, you know, there is that little sort of quirk to Generations in that sense. And I was just thinking, I mean, having just watched the first few minutes of Generations, you know, it is quite interesting like that, the way that they do manage to tie it together temporally between the original generation and the new generation. It's, you know, it's a clever way to do it. Using Guinan as a sort of a linchpin, if you like, for it. It's cleverly done. I mean, I'm trying to think, what did I think of Generations? It was all right, I suppose. It was kind of unfortunate in the sense that they didn't get a chance to completely redo the sets from the Next Generation when they were filming Generations. So what you tend to see, or what you tend to see once you know it, is a lot of reused TV sets that don't really scale well for cinematic use, for film use, because they're not created at the right sort of quality level for film use, and so that, you know, they need a sort of, I think you need that extra level of detail because they're going to be on a much bigger screen. So if you notice, a lot of them seem a bit darker than normal because I think they're trying to hide the imperfections, if you like. I think that's why they did it like that. So they're trying to sort of hide the imperfections a little bit in the TV sets that they've basically just redressed to reuse for the film. So the whole thing is just a little bit unfortunate like that. And don't even get me started on the reuse of the undiscovered country bird of prey effects, because that, I think I saw them in the cinema, unfortunately, one after another. I think I sat through, yeah, I did. I went to, sorry, it's like personal wanderings now. I went to see them with some friends from university. We got in a taxi from Durham and we went to the Newcastle Met Royal Centre, and we sat in the Met Royal Centre cinema watching all of the films from 1 through to 6, and then it was the premiere, well, not the premiere, but you know, it was one of the first showings of Generations after. See, it might, in fact, it might even have been for, or was it for First Contact? So you might have watched 7 films and then First Contact, which was the first proper next-gen film, of course. But in any event, it was just sort of sitting through all those, and Generations was definitely one of those where I thought, do I really want to watch it again? You know, which was, ooh. But yeah, it was just, it did what it needed to do, and it was a nice nod. And, you know, and as we know, you know, they've managed to use that very cleverly in Picard, of course, as well as a sort of jumping off point. So you can't ignore Generations because it's categorically canon and everything else, you know. But it's just one of those films where I'm a little bit sort of, it didn't feel quite as high quality as it could have done. I don't know, that's just me, but I mean, you know, do fight me in the comments by all means, because, you know, I can completely get that you might have a different view of it than, you know, of it than that. Perhaps you may have fonder memories of it. I don't know. But let me know what you thought of it in the comments as the first sort of, you know, next generation film, and I will definitely try and sort of start rounding out some of these now and move into the next generation toys and so on, because yeah, there just aren't that many more of the original series that I've got left to show you, really, at the end of the day. It's simple as that. So I'll leave it there for that one. Do like and subscribe as ever. Cheers for now.